start with a couple of the springs. So this is probably the most troublesome spring. Oh, now, just looking at the position of the lever here and that detent spring, and it's catching the detent spring. I've bent the end of that detent spring down too far. Let me see if I can remedy that situation. I've overdone it when I've been straightening that up. That's better. That's the sort of trouble you can get into when you start adjusting things. You get a bit carried away, you can end up creating problems you didn't have before. Getting the spring hooked into place is usually a bit tricky. It's hard to pick up the end of the spring, lift it over that pin and get it in place like that, so that this lever and this lever are now both spring loaded. Do I need to put anything else in there yet? I think we can put these components in the back. I'll clean these. This is the setting lever for the self-timer and flash sync. This is quite clean. As these things go, you can see it's leaving a lot of dirty marks on here, but that's not a bad example. So I'll just clean all the old oil and rubbish off there. This sets our diaphragm blades, and again, this is quite clean as these things go. Often these are quite oily, particularly in a rangefinder camera like a Retina, where you have the focus helical right behind the shutter. The grease and oil from the focus helical often finds its way through to the back of the shutter. I'll clean this shim. The shim is a bit prone to corrosion. If it's really bad, you might need to scrape any corrosion off it and lubricate it with a bit of graphite, typically a soft lead pencil. It works well for that application. Alright, get these pieces in position. I need some molybdenum. Molybdenum paste, and I want some on that detent there. A wipe on this ratchet piece here, and then this should be able to. Now I'll put the B lever in first. That's what I should do. It's easier to do it in that order. So getting the spring in's a bugger. Where's my B lever? There it is. I'll open the shutter blades. I've got to hold that tab back, push the blade actuating ring round until the blades are in the open position. That allows the B lever to drop into place, and then we're going to get this spring and screw in here. And it's awkward because basically you can only fit this spring in easily when it's under tension. Of course it's not under tension, so the end of it is flailing around, catching on stuff, making it awkward to get that screw started. This is, on earlier shutters they had two springs doing the job that this single spring is doing. it was easier to fit 2 springs than it is to fit the single spring. Swing that round, pop that into position, get it screwed down, check the B lever moves nicely, it does. Tighten it, check again, it's still good. Hold back the B lever, pull the blade actuating ring back into the rest position and move on. So the setting lever, I'm just looking at the tail of that spring, that's bent. Okay, that's been buggered up. Let's get that spring back out. Oh, I didn't do that. But somebody did. That's the wrong shape. I don't know whether you can see the end of that spring, the tail of that spring bent round towards me. It should be straight. Okay. Well, I think we're finding out why this shutter had problems. And I don't think it died of natural causes. I think it was murdered. That's not uncommon. It's just a bit annoying when you discover these things. Right, I'm happier with the shape of that spring, and hopefully that'll do the job it's meant to. Let's find out if I can get the thing back in there. Swing that spring around. Get it on the right side of that lever. Clipped in position, clipped in position. That looks a bit better. Get this in place. Just checking that spring, making sure it's not catching on things. I think it's okay. I have to check the action of that. Make sure it's okay. This shim only goes on in one position. There's a notch in the case and it goes that way up. That's it. Just pull that lever around slightly. Get our setting lever, the aperture setting lever in place. Get that seated over that pin. That's good. 3 small screws that hold this in position. And these look clean. Do these up lightly until they're all in place, then snug them down and check that the action of the adjustment lever is smooth, because if the adjustment lever itself is distorted, it'll have too much friction against the case. It needs to move relatively smoothly. Let's just check that. No, that's good. That's nice and free. I'll check those screws, do them up. Don't go mad on they're only very small screws. Don't go mad doing them up or you'll end up stripping something out of the case. Right, this is going fairly smoothly. I can put that ring back on the bottom of the shutter, remembering it was flat side to the shutter. And that will locate centre the shutter case in the camera body. That's good. We don't need to go crazy doing that up. what next? Well, I think we want our pallet wheel on the paper or in the camera. Where are we? Here we are. There's our pallet wheel, the sector arm that drives the pallets and its spring. Those components need to be cleaned. They're not in a bad state, they're just a little bit dirty. I'll start off with them clean, get rid of any old grease and rubbish that's on them, and I'll put lubricant where I want it to be and nowhere else. Oh yes, I suppose if someone's been throwing around the graphite powder in the shutter, that'll explain why things look a little bit dirty. That'll be the graphite powder I'm seeing. Get that pallet wheel in place. This lever, I put a touch of molybdenum paste on the end. That's where it catches on a bracket back in here. That's to hold the flash sink in the cocked position. Just swing that across and I've got that spring. And the spring hooks over a post and then is stretched out, and the end of the spring hooks into a hole on that arm. So there's the post. Stretch that spring out, drop it into place. There it is. That's done. Just check that that works. The B lever, hold that back, that's good. The other flash sink stuff. I'll get the parts lined up. They look good, and I'll need to clean those with a bit of naphtha just to remove any contaminants. It's particularly important that this lever here is free from oil, because otherwise it tends to stick down on top of the bracket and not swing into place to latch the shutter correctly. Now there are some really odd marks on the top of that, little funny scratch marks. I've got no idea how they came to be there. I imagine it's because someone was poking at it with a screwdriver, and there's scratches I can see from that. I don't know why they'd need to, but we do know that somebody had given up on the shutter as a bad job, and we also know that if they used to repair cameras and they'd given up on the shutter as a bad job, then they were probably quite frustrated with it and had probably tried quite a few things in order to make the thing work. Right, that looks good. I think that fixed flash contact looks a little bit too far out for my liking. Push it back a bit, that's better. So if we latch this in position, take our lever, swing that out, drop that over the pin, make sure it's seated correctly at both ends, plain screw at this end, the return spring and the shoulder screw go at this end. Oops. It was a bit harder getting this screw started because it's any small screw with a large head doesn't want to stand up to allow you to engage your screwdriver. That's better. Now I've got to make sure that the spring goes around the shoulder on the screw, it doesn't get trapped underneath it, so that the spring is free to rotate. That's good. I can nip that screw up and the one at the other end and swing that spring into place. I want to get this camera done in record time because I'm doing this on a Saturday afternoon and I've already had a week of it. Right, let's check. That drops in, the B lever drops, and I'm watching the point at which the shutter contacts make as I press this, open this up, and the B lever should drop in just after the flash contact makes. If the flash contact makes much too early, then you need excessive amounts of force to get the shutter to complete its action, because the flash contact is pushing too hard, or having to push too hard. That's good. I like the way that action's moving. We are just about at the stage where we can fire this thing up and make it go click. The shutter release lever needs to go back in the body. Of course, the shutter release lever is a bit shorter than the ones on the retinas because it doesn't have a great big piece sticking out the side. Just give that shaft a very minor wipe with some molybdenum paste. Get that in position. The tab should be under the B lever. I've got to get the spring down inside the case. That's it, tuck the end of that spring down in there. Okay, right, so now when the shutter is cocked, that cocks this piece, which allows this piece to drop back against the main cam, and the shutter release lifts this arm, which releases the main cam at this point. That all looks good. Main cam and spring. Where's the main cam? And it doesn't appear to have much on it in the way of lubricant, which means that either someone was exceptionally sparing with lubricant or they put none on it at all. Well, given the minimal amount coming off on that, I'd say that it really didn't have any. Now, this component is frequently found buttered with graphite. Using molybdenum paste here on a couple of surfaces, and it doesn't need much. But this part you normally find it completely buttered with graphite grease. It doesn't need to be that either. And the shutter speed, the spring, I'll give that a gentle wipe on the inside with molybdenum paste. I'm not sure that that really does anything at all, but it can't hurt. And we'll hook that spring into position, make sure it's tucked in. Yeah, molybdenum paste. The detent down on that blade actuating ring, I'm just putting a touch of molybdenum paste on there. And the arm here on this bracket, I'm just running a touch down that edge. So now if we cock the shutter here, the shutter's now cocked. We fire the shutter. There, the shutter fired. So that's good. It's moving very quickly. It's moving nice and quickly because it's got no retard gear train in there, to such an extent that the B lever didn't have a chance to drop in and hold the shutter open, which otherwise it would have done. Right, I've got to go and get those retard gear train and the self timer back. Right, these are straight back from the ultrasonic cleaner where they've been cleaned in Naphtha. And that, I'm blowing it all out to make sure that I blow away all that naphtha, and it's also carrying away any deposits that may have been sitting loose in there after the cleaning or during the cleaning, or have been suspended in the naphtha. By blowing the naphtha out, you're blowing away all the contaminants with it. These two speed trains, I like to lubricate them with a bit of graphite powder. Make sure they're clean and dry first. Just tip a bit in there and then just run the speed train. This is the self timer. And run that powder in. And basically I'm just allowing a little bit of graphite powder to be rubbed in the mechanism between the working surfaces on the gears so that everything is moving freely. Just blow that powder out. Let's look at the retard gear train, and basically I'm going to do the same with that. Hold back the pallets at the end, just work a bit of graphite powder in there. That'll probably do. Let's put them in the shutter and see what sort of result we get. And it better be good. Right, so cock the shutter by swinging that across, swinging the main drive cam across, put the retard gear train in position, hold back this tab on the ends because the tab on the bottom of that goes against a knob or a protrusion on the blade actuating ring. It needs to be pulled back from it so it's clear. One screw at this end and a small round head screw at this end, and this goes through an oversized hole in the retard gear train so that you can adjust the position of the retard gear train inwards or outwards, which regulates the speeds. The self timer or delay action fits in here. Drop that into position, and that drops straight into position without any argument. There's a screw on the bottom, it has to drop into a hole on the mechanism plate. For reasons unknown to man, that sometimes doesn't want to cooperate. Right, let's see what happens. Shutter's cocked, we'll set the self timer, that's set. Release the shutter. Oh, that wasn't held back, we'll do that. So hold that back, release the shutter, hold back this tab on the self timer. Self timer runs down, pulls back the tab that's blocking the shutter at about now. The shutter runs down, job done. That's going okay. That's exactly what I'd expect from a shutter. Put a couple more components on here and then I will test the speeds to see what we're getting. Because the job, the shutter itself is just about done. These components are very clean, which means someone's had them out, cleaned them, and have either not lubricated them or been exceptionally mean with the lubricant. But they have been very well cleaned. Right, molybdenum paste. On this internal cocking ring I usually run some around the inside edge, around the outside edge, and that'll do. I'll hook this spring on here over that post, that pin, swing this into position. The little sector gear that cocks the main drive cam, I'll just quick wipe to the shaft of that, that's all that requires. Drop that into position. Get the teeth coupled with the curved rack in the right position. So first tooth on this pinion in the first slot there. The speed setting ring, speed setting cam, I'm just running some molybdenum paste around that inside edge and around those surfaces. Let's pop that into place. Now, with the speed setting ring in that position, I'll cock the shutter. Now that's too fast. That's the 1/8 of a second position, and that's too fast. So I need to move my speed train, my retard gear train, inwards for greater engagement with the cam, which will slow it down. So I've got to loosen that screw slightly and shift that retard gear train in slightly. That is probably too much. Oh, I can tell this one's going to take some toing and